Have you ever been driving at night and felt that something, or someone, was watching you? Something that shouldn't be there? I know it sounds like a silly question. After all, who hasn't been a little nervous when driving alone on a dark road? But let me tell you something. It wasn't just paranoia. Not that night. Not on the A726. My name is William Harper, and I've been a lorry driver for almost 2 decades. I've driven on practically every motorway in this country, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened that night in East Kilbride. If you're here now, you've probably heard stories about haunted roads, but this wasn't a made-up story. It happened to me, and if you're brave enough to continue, I'll tell you all about it. Before you jump to another video, listen to me all the way to the end. What happened to me on the A726 wasn't just a coincidence or a natural phenomenon. It was something different, something that still makes me shudder when I think about it. Motorways are strange places, you know. They seem so normal during the day, busy, noisy, full of life. But at night they change. It's as if the whole world disappears, and you're left alone with your thoughts and the sound of the engine. And on that particular night, as I drove along the A726, I realized that perhaps I wasn't as alone as I thought. Have you ever felt that the road itself was alive? Tell me in the comments. I need to know if I'm alone in this. The truth is that night started like any other. I was returning home after a long delivery in Glasgow. The fog was beginning to engulf the road, and the surrounding forest seemed denser, darker than usual. But then, something changed. Something I can't explain to this day. I'm not a man who scares easily. I've faced storms that seemed to want to rip my lorry off the road. I've driven for hours in torrential rain that turned the track into a muddy river. But that night, that bloody night was different. The fog was as thick as a white curtain, enveloping everything around me. I could barely see more than a few meters ahead. The only sound I could hear was the constant rumble of the engine and the squeal of the tires against the wet asphalt. The forest beside the motorway seemed to swallow up any trace of light, as if it were alive, breathing slowly, waiting for something or someone. That's when the whispering started. At first, I thought it was just the wind, a gentle breeze passing through the branches of the trees, perhaps. But I soon realized that it wasn't. The sounds were coming from outside the lorry, but they weren't like anything I'd ever heard before. They were voices, or rather, fragments of voices carried through the air. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but there was something about them, something desperate, as if they were begging for help, or for revenge. I instinctively slammed on the brakes, slowing down. My heart was pounding in my chest, as if it wanted to escape. I looked through the wing mirror, trying to spot something. In the darkness beyond the road, nothing. Just the mist and the shadows of the trees swaying in the wind. This is ridiculous, I muttered to myself, trying to calm my nerves. You're tired, William. It's just tiredness. But then I saw her. On the roadside, standing like a statue, was a female figure. She was dressed in old clothes, almost as if she had stepped out of another era. Her face was partially covered by a veil, but something about the way she looked at me made me feel as if I had been passed through an electric current. It wasn't a human look. It was empty, as if she wasn't really there. My first instinct was to stop. It seemed wrong to simply ignore someone in that situation, especially on a road as remote as the A726. I slowed down even more until I almost came to a complete stop. I opened the window and shouted, "Do you need help?" No reply. It was still there, motionless, as if it was waiting for something or someone. I got out of the lorry, my feet touching the damp ground. Each step echoed in the stillness of the night, as if the sound was amplified by the darkness itself. As I got closer, I realized something strange. She wasn't casting a shadow. Even with the lorry's headlights illuminating the roadside, her silhouette remained blurred, as if she were made of smoke. "Madam?" I called out again, my voice trembling. Didn't answer, nor did she move. Then, as if she had been erased, she disappeared. There was nowhere to go, nothing but the dense forest behind her. I looked around, trying to find some sign, some trace of what I had just seen. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing. I went back to the lorry, my hands trembling as I turned the key in the ignition. This wasn't normal. It couldn't be real. But I knew, deep down, that I had seen something I couldn't explain. Would you have stopped? Or would you have kept driving? I don't know how long I sat there, with my hands clutching the steering wheel, trying to convince myself that she wasn't real. But something inside me knew there was no denying it. I had seen that figure. She was there, standing on the carriageway, watching me with those empty eyes. And now it had disappeared without a trace. I tried to shift into gear and drive on, but something was wrong, very wrong. The lorry seemed different. I can't explain exactly how, but it was as if it were alive. The engine began to falter, making strange sounds, as if it were fighting some invisible force. The headlights flickered, illuminating the road in front of me intermittently, as if someone was playing with a switch. And then the whispers came again. Only this time they weren't outside. They were coming from inside the lorry. They were low, almost inaudible at first, but soon they began to gain strength, filling the cramped space of the cab. Disjointed words, fragments of sentences that I couldn't fully understand. They seemed to come from everywhere, echoing off the metal walls around me. It was as if the air itself was full of voices that begged, screamed, cried. My heart was hammering in my chest and my hands were shaking so badly that I could barely hold onto the steering wheel. I blinked several times, trying to shake off the feeling that something was very, very wrong. But when I looked in the center rearview mirror, my blood ran cold. Back there, in the back seat, there was a figure, the same woman. Her empty eyes stared at me through the reflection of the mirror, fixed on me like invisible claws. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her lips moved slowly, as if they were forming words I couldn't hear. But I knew what she wanted. She wanted something from me, something I couldn't give her. "Go away!" I shouted, hitting the rearview mirror with my open hand. "Leave me alone!" But she didn't move. She didn't disappear. It remained there, motionless, watching me as if waiting for the right moment to strike. I pressed down on the accelerator, trying to get away as quickly as possible. The lorry roared past, but the road in front of me seemed endless. The fog swallowed everything up, turning the motorway into an endless tunnel. The trees by the side of the road were just indistinct shadows, like spectres mocking me as I tried to escape. But no matter how fast I drove, the feeling of being chased didn't go away. On the contrary, it seemed to grow stronger and stronger. The whispers increased in volume, filling the cabin with an unbearable cacophony. My head was throbbing, as if it was about to explode. It was then that I realized something even more frightening. The road wasn't changing. The kilometers must have been passing, but the landscape remained the same. Always the same gentle curve, always the same dark trees in the distance. It was as if I was stuck in an endless loop, doomed to drive along the same part of the A726 forever. I broke out in a cold sweat, my body shaking uncontrollably. I tried to rationalize what was happening, but nothing made sense. It wasn't normal. It wasn't possible. Then I remembered something I once heard about the A726, an old story told by older drivers in the pubs of East Kilbride. They said that the motorway was built over an ancient Viking burial ground, where warriors killed centuries ago still cried out for revenge. Others said that a woman known as the Lady of the Mist haunted the road, appearing to lonely travelers and taking them to the afterlife. I had never believed these stories before, but that night I began to question everything. Do you believe in curses, or is it all coincidence? Share your thoughts below. I'm desperate to understand what happened to me. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the fog began to dissipate. The road in front of me cleared up, and the whispering diminished until it disappeared completely. When I looked in the rearview mirror again, the figure was gone. I parked the lorry at the first petrol station I could find and ran out, as if the devil himself was after me. I've never driven along the A726 since. That night changed something in me. I can't explain exactly what, but since then, I've never been the same. Even now, months later, I still wake up in a cold sweat, with the whispers echoing in my mind like a distant echo. They're always there, hovering in the dark corners of my thoughts, waiting for the right moment to return. Driving at night has become torture. Every shadow on the road seems alive. Every passing light seems to carry empty eyes watching me. I avoid remote roads at all costs, especially those surrounded by dense forests. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the silence of the cabin, I swear I can still hear those whispers, as if something or someone was still with me. I researched the A726 after that night. I discovered stories that gave me even more goosebumps. Many drivers reported similar experiences. Mysterious figures appearing out of nowhere, inexplicable voices, feelings of being trapped in an infinite loop. Some have even disappeared without a trace. Nobody knows for sure what happened to them. Perhaps they were taken by the Lady of the Mist. Or maybe something even older and darker is buried under the tarmac of that motorway. I don't know what I saw that night. I don't know if it was real or just a hallucination caused by tiredness and darkness. But one thing is certain. It was more than just a chance encounter. It was as if something had chosen me. As if I was part of something bigger. Something that you still can't fully understand. And do you know what's most frightening? The feeling that it's not over. If you've ever driven through East Kilbride, I want to know, did you feel something supernatural. Any presence that shouldn't be there? Me know in the comments. I need to know if others have experienced the same terror. Now, before I close, I want to ask you something. If this story sent a chill down your spine, subscribe to my channel. Here, I share real-life accounts of supernatural experiences on UK roads, histories that will make you think twice before taking to the road at night. Give me a like if this story scared you, and share it with your friends so they can feel the chills too. Your interaction helps these stories live on. Finally, leave a comment. What's the scariest experience you've ever had on the road? I want to hear your stories. Maybe one of them will become the next video here on the channel. See you next time. And remember, not everything on the road can be seen.